In this lesson, we're going to use some different materials. We're going to use something that looks like crayons, but they really aren't crayons. They're called oil pastels. Oil pastels are lots of fun to use, and you get a very sophisticated, very beautiful, brilliant picture with the oil pastels. When they first come to you, oil pastels look like this. They look like a long crayon with paper wrapped around them, but pretty soon you'll find out they won't look like that. So I often have with me a meat tray of some sort, you know, one of these styrofoam meat trays, and you can recycle it right now by using it as a place for your oil pastels. Because one of the first things that I do with oil pastels is to take them and to break them. Doesn't that sound awful? And then we take the paper off the oil pastels so that you not only use the point of the oil pastel, but you use the side of it as well. So pretty soon the whole place begins to look pretty raggedy, and you'll find that in place of that beautiful box that you had at the beginning, you end up with little pieces of oil pastel like this. But that's okay. That's really the way it should be. Sometimes the paper hangs on and sometimes it doesn't. So you'll find that probably after one lesson, your oil pastel box does not look as neat and as tidy as it did at the beginning. There are oil pastels that come in large sets of 24, 25, and so forth, 24, 36, and so on. And you'll find that there are small sets. Both sets are quite adequate. But one of the things that you're going to need after a while will be an extra set of white pastels, because white goes under everything, and you'll find that you're using up your white pastels at a very fast rate. So I'm going to break this white pastel too, and while I'm peeling the paper off of it, I'm going to talk about our art project for today. I have a project that I think that you'll really like. It begins in the deep forest, on the forest floor, where there are some plants that never ever bloom. Do you know what those plants are? Well, they're plants like mushrooms, and they're pressing hard with the side of it, the white. And the reason you put white under everything, I mean you put white under brown, you put white under red, under everything, is because it's going to give a brilliance to your oil pastel that you wouldn't ordinarily have. You like to layer oil pastels too. Oh, look at that. Doesn't that look gorgeous? Now I want to think about shading in this picture. So one side of my oil pastel picture is going to be darker than the other and lighter than the other. And how do we get that? By blending. You know, the very first time I did this lesson too, I thought, a red mushroom? And then I began looking in books, and sure enough, mushrooms come in all different colors. Mushrooms are not always called mushrooms. Sometimes they're called fungi or fungi. Might as well learn a little science along with your art lesson. And what I'm beginning to do now is build up the color on my oil pastel and the shading. And I'm going to go lighter over here and darker over here. It still doesn't look too dark. Notice that you're going to get some buildup and some flecks. Now you can either take your fingernail or you can take a Kleenex or a paper towel. And I'm not going to worry about that little mark up there because it'll be covered over in the end. You know what? That's still not dark enough. So I've got white there, I've got light red, I've got dark red, and still not dark enough. So I'm going to take a blue. Ah, that looks nice. And I'm going to blend the blue in. And there are so many different techniques to using oil pastels. Don't let somebody tell you, oh, there's only one way to use them. There are hundreds of different ways to use these. Some people take their finger and they blend like this. That's perfectly okay. Some people just blend right on the paper, and that's okay too. And you notice that I begin to have a very dark side or shaded side and a very light side. Going back with the white, put some more highlights over there. When you're working with oil pastels, you notice you're always flicking through the box like that. You know, that's the way it goes with oil pastels. Okay, now you can layer and layer and layer, and you can go back and do this over and over again till you get it looking the way that you think is right. I can add some color under here, and we're going to outline a little bit later on. And what do we do again? Every time we lay down a color, we put white under it. Now I'm going to do at least one more mushroom for you before you actually begin, just to show you that you need to layer your colors, white underneath everything. Just put white under everything, okay? Look at that, how bright and brilliant it looks. Now you'll notice that this mushroom looks sort of undiffused, I might call it. It looks unfinished. Well, it is unfinished because we need to go back later on. We're going to put in lines like this later on, the gills underneath there. They call it gills to the mushrooms, and the fringes and what have you. But if I took the proper amount of time right now to finish this up, you'd never get a chance. And it's you. You're the one that's important. You want to have time to do yours. Okay? Let's go through the steps of the lesson again. I'm going to do a different mushroom this time. What's underneath? White. Notice this is going to take me about less than 15 seconds to do, just to lay in the white. I did it very hard, sort of lighter there. Okay, let's take a different color. I'm going to use 4 different colors this time. I'm going to start with a yellow. Aha, beautiful. Wouldn't be that pretty, it wouldn't be that nice and vibrant if I didn't have white underneath. I like that. That looks good. All right, there's one shade of yellow. Here's a yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is sort of mushroom, mustard color. A lot of people say yuck when they see it, but I love it. I couldn't do any of my pictures if I didn't have access to yellow ochre. Okay, and you notice that I'm not being terribly careful. All right, I have yellow, I have white, yellow. Let's put in a little orange, shall we? A little yellow orange. That's not dark enough. Let me use a different orange here. Break it, peel it. Takes just a minute. Aha! Now that really looks good. Okay, again, some people will tell you, well, you must use your fingers to blend. That's a lot of nonsense. A lot of people don't. You can do, again, oil pastels in lots of different ways. I'm just showing you one different way. Let's keep the highlight on that side, and now let's bring in some brown. And let's begin to put the brown over here. Brown here. Well, we can put it all over because the other colors will show up underneath. And we want to press harder over here and get a shaded effect. Okay? Now, notice that I'm working rather fast, and I'm going to put in one more color. Another color? Yeah. Because I need a little shadow on that side. Oh, you can go back and back and back. The hard part is stopping, and I'm going to have to stop in just a second so you get a chance to do this. Okay, I've done 2 mushrooms, right? Let's go down to the log again. What am I going to do with the log? Just what I did with everything else. I'm going to put white underneath. I'm working with the side of my oil pastels very fast. I'm pressing hard. I'm not using the tip. Did you notice that? I'm not using the tip of the oil pastels very much. And again, I'll go back with 3 or 4 colors. Layer. Pick the lightest colors first that are related, okay? And because I'm doing this as a demonstration, this particular one won't be finished, but we will go on and show you the second step in just a little bit. All right, there's the brown again. Notice I don't have to be terribly careful. Oh, I went over my lichen with the brown. Lichen itself is not as bright a mossy green. Mossy green looks sort of like this in many cases, though there are lots of different mosses too. But a lichen would be sort of a gray-green, so I might go back and put a gray in the patches of the lichen and so forth. Now, remember I said that there are hundreds of different types of mushrooms in the world? Well, that's where you can let your imagination run rampant, and you can begin to put your mushrooms in reds and purples and blues and all that sort of thing. When you get down to the log, you want to go back a little bit to reality, and you want to begin to put log colors in. Log colors, of course, would be browns, yellows, and there should be several different kinds of browns. At this particular point, you want to, there it is, there's a dark brown. You want to avoid any black. We will finish up with the black, but right now we want to avoid that. And I'm just going back and back and back and layering. Now at this point, I am going to switch because if I kept on with this picture, which would take me about an hour to finish, and oil pastels are not like watercolors. They really do take a long time. I'm just going to put this to the side, and you can get out your oil pastels right now. You can draw your picture in white, begin to layer in the white underneath, and begin to do your second part. But what I'm going to show you is a picture that has been partially finished. All right, now here are some different colors. Notice how bright and vibrant that log is. I even mixed in some red with the browns and the yellows and so forth. Notice that in this purple mushroom, which is not yet finished either, I've put in some white and then some blue and some purple and some red. All these colors mixed together look very, very good. So this is still working on stage 2 or step 2. I would go in and lay in the white and begin to fill these in. Now, as nice as this picture is beginning to look, I'm going to put it aside, and I'm going to bring up a picture, 2 pictures that are actually finished. And how are they finished? Well, this particular picture, someone has taken and done their mushrooms, and then they've taken black, and they've gone over the outside of all of the colors. And the black, you'll find, gives you a vibrant, pulled together look to your picture. I'm going to show you another picture that's finished too. So all you need to do, we did add some fern, and I don't put white under fern very often. I do use the light green. Ferns are also plants that never ever bloom. They have spores on their underside. They grow out there in the forest. And you notice that we have a very nice picture, not quite finished. This is like step 3. There are some parts here that would have to be finished. Probably should have been finished before we put some black on. And the black outlining at the end gives you a very, very nice finished look to your picture. Okay, now let me put that aside and let me show you a finely finished picture. This is where we started with drawing it with the white. We put white underneath everything. We added layer upon layer upon layer of color. We tried to get a light side and a shaded side, a light side and a shaded side. And when we finally got finished, we took a black oil pastel and we outlined everything very, very darkly. This one could have even a darker black outline. The only thing we don't outline with black are the ferns in the back. Now you'll find that not everybody uses black outlines, but it does pull your picture together. And if you've got that unfinished feeling to your picture when you get done with the oil pastels, take a little black and outline your major parts, and you'll find that you get a very, very finished picture. You know what? Looking at this makes me feel like I'm back in the forest, and it makes me feel as though I'd like to take my oil pastels out there and do some sketching in the forest. Oil pastels are great for taking with you because not only are they inexpensive, but they're easy to use and they go anywhere. So if you can't take something like watercolors or oils with you, take your oil pastels and have fun with them wherever you go. This is the end of our lesson in oil pastels. I hope you've had fun. I hope you've learned to blend and get highlights and shading in your picture. Our art lesson today is called foil art, and I think that you'll find it very, very interesting. Foil art is a little different from probably anything that you've done before. I'd like to show you here in front of me the finished product. It may not be a seahorse that you come out with, but I want to show you the general idea of the finished product. Foil art comes out looking like something we call a bas-relief. A bas-relief means that it has raised and lowered surfaces. And in this picture of the seahorse, you see that the outline of the seahorse is raised and rather shiny, and that the background pieces are lower and sort of dull. This gives us the feeling that we have a piece of old pewter or old silver here with a raised picture on it. Let me show you what materials we're going to need to do in a tube. Now, let me explain about this. Printmaking ink is really paint. So you may hear me calling it paint, or you may hear me calling it ink. It's the same thing. It really is a water-based paint in a tube, so we call it ink. People used to use oil-based printing inks all the time, and you still can use them, but they're much, much more complicated. So for our purposes, we're going to use a water-based ink today. We'll probably end up using about 3 colors. You're going to need some glue, some white glue, and a little bit of water. You're going to need something called a brayer. Now a brayer looks like this. It looks like an ordinary roller, and it's true, it is a roller. Some of them come with brown handles, some come with orange. Really doesn't matter. But what you do with brayers matters. You press with them and you roll with them, and I'll show you how to use those in just a little while. The other thing that you need in order to do printmaking would be a cookie tray. Now I'm going to show you sort of a dirty looking cookie tray, and I'm going to tell you why that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't mean that this cookie tray has cookies on it. No, no, no. This has leftover paint on it. Why is that okay? Well, in the first place, I'm going to put new paint down, and I'm going to roll over that paint with a brayer. But sometimes these happy accidents occur by picking up stray bits and pieces of paint. Printmaking is not always just straight on planned for effect. Then I'm going to show you that you need a piece of tag board like this. It doesn't have to have lines. I'm just using up an old piece that was around the schoolroom. And you need a piece of chipboard, which is pretty heavy, or you can use cardboard, because when you use cardboard, you get some interesting special effects. So now that you have your tools, you have the paint, which is called ink, the glue, the scissors, the tag, and so forth, I'm going to begin to draw. Now, as with most things in printmaking, you want to do something that is fairly easy. And there are just a few rules. Well, everybody can draw circles, right? Everybody can draw triangles, and everybody can draw rectangles. There's no problem whatsoever. So on this piece of paper, I'm going to first of all draw a square. Now, was that hard? No, it was really easy. Doesn't mean you have to draw a square. It just means that squares are easy if you can't think of something else. I sort of have in my head the idea of a Middle Eastern city. So I'm now going to draw a half circle. Anybody can draw that. I'm going to draw an arch. No problem there. A couple of rectangles here, perhaps. A rectangular building here. Perhaps this is a tower in the city, and there's a little archway here. The fact that this is slightly crooked doesn't bother me. It gives it a little bit of charm, okay? And then perhaps over here we have another square, because the buildings in a hot country, like many of the countries in the Middle East, have a tendency to have flat roofs so they can collect the rain, so they can lie up there at night when it's hot. Now that looks okay, and that would make a good print right as it is, but I'm going to add something to it for interest. I think I'll add a palm tree, which you can do just by coming out like this from the center. You can go out here. See, palm trees aren't hard. Don't let anybody discouraging you by saying, well, yours doesn't look like a palm tree. It looks enough like a palm tree. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Forget perfect when you're doing art. Something that I forgot to tell you, though, this is very bad of me, is that most things should be separated and have a space between them. In other words, the palm tree should really not touch this. The roof should not touch the building. If I put another roof on here, perhaps another half dome, it should not touch the building, and these buildings should not touch. That's because your ink goes in between. All right, that was step one. Wasn't that fast and easy? What else could you draw besides a Middle Eastern city? There are many things. You think about them, and I'll show you some examples later that will give you some other ideas. You've already seen a cat. So what I'm going to do now is step two. And step two is simply cutting out your cutting out your tag pattern that you've made by drawing. And people say, well, look what you're doing to the lines. Doesn't matter. Those lines are not going to show up in your printing. Those crayon lines will not show up. I'm going to do this in a rather hurried fashion, and I don't want to take too long because you want to have time again to do your own print. So I'll just get you started and show you what to do. As you cut out a piece, paste it, don't paste it, just lay it on your board before you paste it to make sure that you have the right spaces. Some people like to save their extra pieces of chipboard. I bet you could make a wonderful pattern out of the leftovers and even print that pattern. Now, as I said before, I'm not going to cut out the whole thing. I'm just going to cut out part of it so that you can see what to do. People often ask me, children and grown-ups alike, well, what do you do about the windows? We can make one simple cut like this that won't show when you glue. And then you go just in carefully. And you keep turning the board and turning your scissors. And there you have the window. I'm not going to cut them all for you all the way. Now you could say, well, what about that? It's not going to show because you're going to paste it down. So the next thing that we're going to do is to take every part of your picture, cut it apart, and paste it down. Now, because it takes so long to do, I'm only going to do one pasting, and then I'm going to show you the second step. All right? Well, I could have used that too. Notice that nothing touches anything else. That's a very important item to remember. Okay, now what have we done so far? We have drawn and we have cut out, and now we're going to paste. We've checked it by putting them on the paper. Notice again that I have not done the whole picture. That's because I don't want to take all that long to do that. Aha, here comes the paste. Do you ever have that problem? Sometimes the paste just doesn't come out when you want to. Now, so far I haven't gotten any glue on my fingers. That's not to say that I won't. I'm going to paste around that window, paste here, and I could take one finger at this point and smear the paste. I don't know that that absolutely has to be done. You're going to find that some of the paste peeks out from this picture. I guess we should have a paper towel here. And all right, now we're going to paste it down very firmly. I would have cut out the other window too. Now do you see when you paste it down very firmly, it's not going to, that paste won't show when you do your printmaking. The crayon lines won't show, just the shapes will show. Okay, now we have to give this what I call the fingernail test. After you've pasted it down, it has to be very firmly attached to the picture, to the board. And you have to give it the fingernail test. And if you can get a fingernail under it and lift it up, you have to go back and tap it down again. Now let's pretend that you've done this step and that you've pasted everything on. Naturally, so it doesn't take so long, I'm not going to paste everything. I'm going to get rid of this for just a moment. And I'm going to take one that has been finished being pasted. All right, let's look at this and go over our steps. Step 1 was to draw. We did that. Step 2 was to cut out. We did that. Step 3 was to paste these pieces on with nothing touching anything else. And step 4 probably would be to give it the fingernail test and make sure that nothing was so loose that the paint would go underneath, or the ink, whichever you wish to call it. Okay, at this point we have what's called a board or a mat, something that you can print from. And remember, anything that you do is going to be printed in the opposite direction from the way that you think it's going to come out. It's going to be printed backwards. So I would avoid cutting out words and things of that sort. You might be surprised at getting high backwards, which isn't too exciting to do anyway. Okay, are you ready to print? I'm ready to print, which means that I'm going to go over here to my cookie tray, and on the cookie tray I'm going to spread the ink, or as we sometimes call it, the paint. So I'm going to come over here to my cookie tray. And you know, a cookie tray is important to have, but at the same time, you can have something else. Like I have here a piece of glass that's been taped. You can use that as well. Now, here's how you spread the ink on. I usually use at least 2 colors, but I always print in white first. So we're going to take this tube of printing ink or printing paint, water-based, and just like a tube of toothpaste, we're going to squeeze from the bottom and squeeze this tube of paint out on the tray. All right, here's where the printing comes in. This is the fun part. I'm going to get all this other stuff out of the way. And I'm going to right now flick in some water. Now watch this, because you don't want to get too much water. I'm going to dip my hand in the water like this, just the finger, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. And that seems to be enough water. All right, now you take the brayer, and it's important to go up and down and sideways. Up, ooh, does that feel gushy? Fun. I like gushy things, don't you? All right, you go up and down and sideways until your brayer is loaded with ink. Sometimes, remember what I said about happy accidents? Sometimes you'll find that your brayer is too loaded with ink and you don't get a wonderful print. The thing about printmaking is you can do it hundreds of times. So now I'm going to take my brayer. Do you see the brayer? It seems to be loaded with ink. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to roll the ink on my mat. And at this point you feel, uh-oh, I'm ruining it. Well, you're not really. Look at this. I'm going to take it and roll over as much of the mat as I want to. I can roll over the whole mat or just part of it, but I definitely am going to roll over my whole cut-out picture. Definitely. Okay. Now, I think that I have enough ink, and you might say, well, how do you know? Well, it looks sort of tacky and white and so forth. Now, here comes the part. You never know how it's going to look when you do this. There are several ways to do your printing, but what I'm going to do at this particular moment is to take my mat and I'm going to center it nicely by holding on to the edges, and I think that that's centered, and I'm going to put it down like this. I'm going to flip it over. As I say, there are several ways of doing this. And now I'm going to rub my fingers all over. I can also take a brayer. I don't always like to use the brayer. Notice it's clean brayer, squeaky, clean brayer, and roll it over the picture. Now, just to make sure that all the raised and lowered parts are really printed, I'm going to take my fingertips and turn this over. Now, here's the scary part. When I turn this over, I may have a lovely print or I may have a blob. You never know what you're going to get. I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to hope that I get a lovely picture. Actually, I guess I better turn it back. And what I'm going to do is put one hand here and I'm going to peel it back, not tear it back or do it too fast, just peel it back. And I'm going to hope, yay, all right, I have a beautiful print. Isn't that gorgeous? Look how easy that was. Isn't that a nice print? Now, that was the good part. That really turned out nicely. Here comes the super good part. The super good part is I can take this board or mat and I can go over it hundreds of times, millions of times, lots of times. And I can do it again and again and again. So let me take another color. Let me riffle through here and see some. Well, let's see. Let's try black, shall we? Sometimes black works really well. And it doesn't have to be black. It can be some other color. And we're going to show you how to print with more than one color. Okay, here we go. Same thing. Let's go back. Let's put a little white in it again. The white underneath gives it brilliance. Okay, now let's take a different color. Let's take turquoise. Let's put the turquoise over here. Remember, like the toothpaste? And let's take just a little water. You just go flick, flick, flick 3 times, 4 times maybe? Okay. And then you start rolling with your brayer. Now you're going to notice that some of this turquoise may roll into the white. It doesn't bother me that much. That's how I'm going to get some of those happy accidents that I talked about. And the question is, where am I going to place the turquoise on this picture? The answer is wherever I feel like it. Isn't that nice? You can do that too. I don't know. I think that I'll go like, ooh, boy, is that too much? We won't know until we print. It looks pretty good to me. And we're going to get maybe a mysterious quality to this. I don't know. See, again, with printmaking, you never know what you're going to get. Now, if I happen to get a print that I don't like out of this, I'm not going to cry about it. I'm just going to go and do it again and again and again, which you can do. You can use this mat hundreds of times. I'm going to center it, press it down, flip the paper over, rub with my fingers, and I could rub with a brayer as well. But with my fingers, I have the ability to feel all the raised and lowered edges. Now again, remember, you never know what's going to happen. It can be wonderful, it can be awful, it can be fantastic. You never, ever know with printmaking. Ah, I like it. We have a good print. Isn't that pretty? Now, I could go on and on and on. I think that what I'll do is just add one more color. And let's see, I think I'll add magenta. And since we don't have a whole lot of room, well, a whole lot of room here, I'll just put it in here with the white, which may turn it a little pinker than I wish. And we will print one more time just to see what we get. Actually, once you do this, it's very hard to stop. You want to go on and on and on and keep on printing as much as you can. Well, that's the fun part, unless somebody says you have to stop and do arithmetic or you have to stop and do something else, you can keep on printing practically forever. Now you notice I already have white on here and I already have turquoise, and now I'm adding magenta. And that means that I'm going to get a lot of those colors peeking through. And so that means that it's going to be interesting. Ooh, that magenta is a little strong, isn't it? Little bit strong. I'm not even too sure that I want to print it on pink. Let's hope some of the turquoise shows through. Let's get a little turquoise in there just for kicks, okay? Where are we going to put it? Okay. Now I'm going to print it. As I say, I'm not sure that pink is the right color to print it on, but that's the nice thing about printmaking. You can experiment and experiment and experiment and go on and on and on with this. All right, here we go. Now we're going to take this and we're going to center it. We're going to press it down so it sticks. Hold on, flip it over, and rub. So we've done a white one, turquoise and white one, and now we've added magenta and a different color of paper, and let's see what happens. Are we going to get happy accidents? Are we going to get a wonderful print? Are we going to have to do it over again? You never, ever know with printmaking, but do try to rub hard anyway, okay? Now we're going to peel it, hold, peel, and let's see what happens. Very nice. Look at that print. Isn't that beautiful? So now look what we have. We have 3 prints here from one mat, and all 3 of them are gorgeous. That's the fun thing about printmaking. Now you could go on and make 100 of these. You could use different colors of paper, different colors of inks, and you go on and on and on making different prints from this. It's good to make greeting cards. These are frameable right here. You could frame these and put them on the wall any day. Printmaking is a wonderful technique to use. I hope that you'll have a good time doing lots of printmaking.